Today I'd like to cover how you can sit more comfortably in this position. Alright, so first off, this position is called Seiza, and it's comprised of two Japanese characters. The first character is Tadashi, which means correct. Second character is Suwaru, which means to sit. When you put those characters together, the pronunciation changes and it becomes Seiza, correct sitting. I've lived over half my life here in Japan. Yeah, I know, it's a pretty long time. And for me, this is a very comfortable position, but I know that it can be quite troublesome for a lot of people out there. Today, what I'm going to do is cover why would you want to sit in this position, and then also help you to be able to more comfortably get into this position and show you a couple other variations. So why the heck would you want to sit in Seiza? Well, kind of three things here. First off, it's going to alleviate a little bit of the stress that's in the lower back. It's going to help you with better posture, and as well, it's actually easier to get up off of the floor from this position. Now, let's take this into consideration, compare it to this position where, while in the beginning sitting in this position, you might have good posture. Because there's no support underneath except for the floor here, there is a tendency for people to eventually and gradually start to round the back. And so you see this curvature in the back. And also if you have tight hip flexors, it can just be a little bit difficult as we get older to sit in this position. Now, however, when you're sitting in the most efficient manner of Seiza, which I will cover, you'll find that it's actually quite difficult to round the back due to the fact that it's difficult to create this pelvic tilt necessary in order to help you to round your back. So what I'm getting at is that simply by sitting in this position, you're able to sit more comfortably with less lower back strain with correct posture, and when you have your heels underneath you, you will be able to sit in this position for longer periods of time, which I'm going to cover right now. First and foremost, we want to have our toes together, our big toes touching, and we're going to have our heels face up. So we're not putting them in an angle. They're directly in line so that we can take our sit bones, place them on top of our heels. This is very important. This is a position that we want to be able to get into for the correct position, Seiza. Now, looking at it from the front, we'll take a look at the knees. Now, depending if you're doing martial arts or tea ceremony, it changes just a little bit. But for our sake here, what I think that we should be looking at or trying to work towards is having 3 fists width in terms of distance with our knees. Okay, so super simple, right? Okay, 1, 2, 3 is a good place for us to kind of aim towards for being able to get into this position. Now, let's take a look at some things that actually aren't really good. And so something that you see a lot here in Japan with the older generation is where they'll have the heels out to the side. I actually have a hard time kind of doing this just because I'm not used to it, is where the heels are out this way at an angle, the butt is sitting in between the feet. Now, why is this bad? Now, there's a phrase, there's a word in Japanese called okyaku. And so you see this a lot. The legs are bowed. And so it looks like they've been riding a horse. Now, the reason for that is because of the way they sit with their butt in between their heels in Seiza for long durations of time. It also, you see that their back's round when they're sitting in this position. Yes, it's very comfortable for them, but it actually changes our legs, and it's not good for us. Something else that I see quite a bit because people actually can't sit in this position is where they might cross a foot, okay, and they sit in this. Well, it's not necessarily bad per se. I really suggest not doing that and spending the time working to be able to get into the position I showed where the toes are together with the heels facing up. The reason why, it's actually to get in and out of this position, stand up, sit down, when you can have this position and not cross your feet. If you're a martial artist, this is especially important. And when I did Iaido and Kendo all those years, this was a huge point that was brought up for me in order to maneuver in and out of positions, which we're going to cover later. All right, so take a look right here and you'll see that the top of my foot, ankle, and the shin is completely flat on the floor. Now, this takes a lot of time to get to. Do you have to have this down to be able to do Seiza comfortably? No, but the thing is working towards that is going to further strengthen your ankles, improve your mobility, as well as control in the ankles and the legs. Now, the way to work towards Seiza, I've found, is just first off, start in this position with the toes together. And all we're going to do is pulse back as far as we can. And you can do this for 10 counts. 9 and then 10. And just hold this final position, if you will. Okay? Now, depending on your level of flexibility, you might find that you can sit further back. Great, okay? But the thing is to first test and assess where you're at. Now, if you're the kind of person where this is just extremely painful and you actually have this opening here, this is going to take quite a bit of time to work on. So allow yourself the time. And what I mean is that just work a little tiny bit each day. And it can be, for example, maybe you're watching TV or something and you just do this for like a minute and then you're done that day. That could be it. Now, how long is it going to take for you to be able to get into this position? I don't know. Probably going to take a while. But the thing is it doesn't matter, because as long as you're improving just a little bit each day, hey, you're improving, and that's all that matters. So again, you're not wanting to force yourself into this position and immediately just try and sit into it. Use your hands for training wheels. Go easy with it. Once you finally get your butt to your heels rather than just sitting up, push away from the floor and start working on pulses in this position. Okay, so again, even though your heels and your butt are connected now, continue to use the hand for training wheels, working yourself into the position so that you're doing it in a way that's going to be safe, and then also allow you to make continued progress on a daily basis. Now, one other thing that you can do that's going to help is actually not this position, but this position. Now, this one is where people tend to have quite a bit of trouble. This puts a lot of strain, not just on the bottom of your feet, but obviously the tops of your feet. So similarly to the way that we trained Seiza in this way, you can do the same with your toes up. So pulsing back into this position, finding that in range, hanging out here to the point where your feet are getting stronger. The flexibility is improving, and you have the control to be able to get in and out of this position, okay? This is probably going to take quite a bit of time. I do suggest after doing this, go back and do the regular Seiza again, just to stretch things out. We can actually go from Seiza and go into standing, and instead of just loading this leg and throwing the opposite leg forward, we'll use that toe up position to help us. Now, when you're working on this, this is where you start to put things together, and think of it kind of like as a little combo. One of our programs, we have Seiza to sumo squat. Now, when performing this same thing, this time the focus is on the hips. And so I'm actually driving with the hips first to initiate the movement to allow me to get my toes up. I then sit back on my toes. I can load, bringing the arms forward, up again. And now you'll notice that I'm in a lunge position, okay? And so I can drive upwards from here. Similarly, if I were to return back into Seiza, toes are up. I bring the toes back together. Toes are up now. I can sit back, hang out here for a second, give myself a stretch, bring the hips forward again, drop the toes, and then sit back into Seiza. There's any number of ways that you can play around with this, but it's not just a matter of sitting in this position, but getting to where we can move in and out of the position. And by doing that, it's actually going to help to further strengthen our feet, legs, as well as our posture, improve the flexibility, and of course, control. All right, so quite a bit of information here on Seiza. I've obviously got a lot of thoughts on it. And like I said, there's many different ways depending on what style you're in. There's different ways of sitting, but I've just found that this position where the toes are touching, the big toes are touching, the heels are straight up in the air, you have 3 fists width of distance here to be a good place to aim for in order to not only get comfortable in this position, but to also be in a position where it's not going to cause damage down the line.